I was just loading my groceries into my car when this teenage boy, maybe 16 or 17, strutted up to me like he owned the entire parking lot. Without so much as a hello, he pointed at my bags and said with complete seriousness, "Give me those. My mom runs this neighborhood, and she says I can have whatever I need." I actually laughed, thinking it was some kind of joke. But the kid's face stayed dead serious. "I'm not kidding," he said, crossing his arms. "You don't want to mess with my mom. She's the HOA president, and she can make your life miserable." I shook my head, told him no, and continued loading my trunk. He stomped off, pulling out his phone and muttering something about how I'd regret this. 10 minutes later, as I was about to drive away, a patrol car pulled up behind me with its lights flashing. The officer who stepped out looked apologetic before he even spoke. "Sir, I need to ask you a few questions. We received a call about aggressive behavior and intimidation of a minor in this parking lot." I raised an eyebrow, set down my last grocery bag, and reached into my jacket. The moment I pulled out my badge, the officer's expression changed completely. "Chief Morrison," he said, clearly surprised. "Yes, Officer Daniels," I replied calmly. "Now, did this report happen to mention what occurred before this alleged intimidation?" He checked his notes and shook his head. "Just says you threatened a teenager named Tyler Pemberton after he asked you for help." I couldn't help but smile at the creative interpretation of events. I explained the actual situation to Officer Daniels, who looked increasingly uncomfortable as I spoke. The market had security cameras, I pointed out, and there were at least 3 other shoppers who witnessed the entire exchange. "Let me guess," I said. "The caller was Patricia Pemberton, HOA president of Maplewood Estates?" Officer Daniels nodded slowly. "She insisted we respond immediately. Said you were dangerous." I sighed, knowing exactly where this was headed. Patricia Pemberton, or Karen as most of the neighborhood called her behind her back, had been using her HOA position like a personal weapon for the past 2 years. But calling the police on false pretenses? That was a new low, even for her. "Follow me to the station," I told Officer Daniels. "We need to document this properly." But first, I had another stop to make. The HOA clubhouse was only 5 minutes away, and I knew Patricia would be there, probably already drafting some new ridiculous rule about grocery store parking lot conduct. Sure enough, her silver Lexus was parked in its usual spot, taking up 2 spaces as always. I walked in to find her holding court with 2 other board members, speaking in that nasally voice that could peel paint. "And that's why we need stricter rules about who can shop at our local stores," she was saying. "We can't have just anyone from outside neighborhoods coming in and causing problems." The moment I walked through the door, she stood up with a triumphant smile. "There he is. Officers, arrest this man immediately. He threatened my poor Tyler." But her victory dance was short-lived. Officer Daniels walked in behind me and addressed me formally. "Chief Morrison, I've reviewed the security footage from the market. It clearly shows the minor approaching you and making demands." Patricia's face went from smug satisfaction to confusion, then to something resembling a deflated balloon. "Chief?" she repeated weakly. "That's correct, Mrs. Pemberton," I said, keeping my tone professional despite the satisfaction I felt. "I'm Police Chief James Morrison, and your son didn't ask for help. He demanded I hand over my groceries because, and I quote, his mom runs this neighborhood." The other board members exchanged nervous glances as I continued. "Furthermore, you called 911 to file a false report, claiming I threatened your son when multiple witnesses and video evidence show the opposite. Your son attempted to intimidate and essentially extort a stranger in a parking lot." Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. But Tyler said." She stammered. "Tyler lied," I said simply. "And you weaponized emergency services based on that lie without bothering to verify anything. Do you understand the seriousness of filing a false police report?" The room fell silent except for the quiet humming of the air conditioner. One of the other board members, a man named Robert Sullivan who'd always seemed reasonable, cleared his throat. "Patricia, is this true? Did you really call the police without checking what actually happened?" She turned on him with her usual venom. "Robert, you don't understand. This man was—" But I cut her off. "Mrs. Pemberton, I suggest you stop talking before you make this worse for yourself. Officer Daniels, please read Mrs. Pemberton her rights and issue a formal warning for filing a false report. I'll be recommending the District Attorney's Office review this for possible charges." The color drained from Patricia's face as Officer Daniels began reciting the familiar words. "As for your son," I continued once Officer Daniels finished, "Tyler will be referred to Juvenile Services for attempted intimidation and extortion. The market is also considering banning him from their premises." Patricia sank into her chair, the weight of her actions finally hitting her. But I wasn't done. "Mr. Sullivan," I addressed the board member, "I'll be filing a formal complaint with the HOA board about Mrs. Pemberton's abuse of her position. She used her title to try to have me arrested on false charges. I believe that warrants an emergency board meeting, don't you?" Robert nodded quickly. "Absolutely. This is completely unacceptable." The next few days moved quickly. The HOA board called their emergency meeting, and I attended to present my case. The market manager provided the security footage, which clearly showed Tyler approaching me aggressively, demanding my groceries, and me calmly refusing before he stormed off. 3 witnesses provided written statements confirming my version of events. Patricia tried to defend herself, claiming she was just protecting her son, but the evidence was overwhelming. The board voted unanimously to remove her as president, effective immediately. She was also banned from holding any HOA position for 5 years. But the legal consequences were just beginning. The district attorney's office decided to pursue charges for filing a false police report, a misdemeanor that carried up to 6 months in jail and a $5,000 fine. Patricia hired an expensive lawyer, but the evidence was irrefutable. She had called 911, claimed I threatened her son, and demanded my immediate arrest, all based on a complete fabrication. Tyler, meanwhile, was required to complete 40 hours of community service and attend a juvenile diversion program. The judge made it clear that his entitled behavior, encouraged by his mother's example, would not be tolerated. At Patricia's sentencing hearing 3 months later, the judge was particularly harsh. "Mrs. Pemberton," he said sternly, "you didn't just waste police resources. You attempted to weaponize law enforcement against an innocent person, who happened to be the very chief of police sworn to protect this community. Your actions show a dangerous disregard for the truth and an abuse of whatever small authority you held." The courtroom was packed with neighbors from Maplewood Estates, many of whom had suffered under Patricia's tyrannical HOA reign. I could see several of them nodding as the judge spoke. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "the court has reviewed your history of HOA complaints and violations issued. 37 complaints in 2 years, Mrs. Pemberton. Fines for grass being 1/4 inch too long, for curtains being the wrong shade of beige, for a children's bicycle left in a driveway for 15 minutes. You've created a climate of fear and intimidation in your community, and it culminated in this criminal act." Patricia's lawyer tried to object, but the judge waved him off. "Your client's pattern of behavior is relevant to sentencing, counselor." The prosecutor stood up to add more context. "Your Honor, we've also discovered that Mrs. Pemberton told her son he could take whatever he wanted from anyone in the neighborhood because of her position. Several other residents have come forward with similar stories of Tyler making demands, though this was the first time it escalated to attempted extortion of a stranger." Patricia glared at me from the defendant's table, as if this was somehow all my fault. Her perfectly styled hair was slightly disheveled, and her designer suit looked a bit wrinkled, probably the most unkempt I'd ever seen her. "The state recommends the maximum sentence," the prosecutor concluded. The judge nodded thoughtfully, then delivered his verdict. "Patricia Pemberton, I hereby sentence you to 90 days in county jail, with 60 days suspended pending successful completion of probation. You will serve 30 days, beginning immediately. Additionally, you are sentenced to 2 years of supervised probation, 300 hours of community service to be performed at local food banks and homeless shelters, and a fine of $5,000 plus court costs." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Patricia's face went from red to white to a strange shade of purple. "But Your Honor," her lawyer pleaded, "my client has never been in trouble before. She's a mother, a homeowner, a pillar of the community. The judge's expression hardened. A pillar who used her position to terrorize neighbors and teach her son that he was above the law. The 30 days of jail time is non-negotiable. Bailiff, please take Mrs. Pemberton into custody. As the bailiff approached with handcuffs, Patricia completely lost her composure. "This is insane," she screamed. "Do you know who I am? I'm the HOA president. I keep property values up. I maintain standards. You can't do this to me." The judge's gavel came down hard. "Former HOA president, Mrs. Pemberton. And I just did."